Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today on Face Off, we're looking at two First Doctor stories, and my question was, which one of these comedic-styled First Doctor historicals do you think is better? The Gunfighters or the Romans? Or do you think it's a tie or can't possibly decide? And with a whopping 77% of the vote, over three-fourths of the vote, the Romans won. The Gunfighters had 19% of the vote, with 4% saying they couldn't decide or it was a tie. So a strong win for the Romans. I agree with this. Between the two, I much prefer the Romans. I'm not a big fan of the Gunfighters. To be fair, in the Gunfighters' defense, 90% of my dislike of it is the Ballad of Johnny Ringo song. 90% of it. Oh, because they're very proud of that song. They play it like every 3 seconds. They literally need a special edition of that story that just takes the song out and would drastically improve it. And the novelization of the Gunfighters is actually a nice read. But even with that being said, I really enjoy the Romans. I like the Romans a lot. It's hilarious. And the guest cast and the main cast are doing a good job of treating it as a comedy without treating it as a farce. It's really funny. The First Doctor gets some funny lines. William Hartnell gets some funny stuff to do in here, and he seems to be having a really good time doing it. I love when he gets upset with Victoria for spoiling his bout of fisticuffs. Like to occasionally engage in a bout of fisticuffs. I love that. It's hilarious. The guy playing Nero is perfect for a comedic-styled Nero. Hats off to him. I love that the Doctor and Vicky keep missing Ian and Barbara. They just keep barely missing each other, like Nero chasing Barbara around. That's hilarious to me, while trying to avoid his wife. And when he gets caught, that kind of uh-oh look on his face. It's funny. Ian's sword fighting in that episode is really good, too. You can tell he's taken, fencing lessons, sword fighting lessons. Because a lot of the staged fights in 60s Who are... sometimes you can tell they're not very staged. It's just get in there and do something, and it doesn't come across well. But that fight that Ian has in that story with Nero as presiding over it is really good. It was really impressive. I'm like, man, this is pretty good, especially for 60s Who. This is really good. So I really enjoyed that. And then just the guy playing Nero, like when the Doctor knows he's planning to feed him to the lions, and he's anticipating him. Yes, give them something they can really sink their teeth into. And Nero's like, hey, you guess. It's funny. That whole bit's funny. I like the Romans a lot. I think it's just a really fun First Doctor story. So let's pop down to the comments. Let's see what you guys have to say. Bananas are good, which is one of my favorite screen names. Says the Romans by far. It's one of my favorite Hartnell stories in general, and Hartnell is such a joy to watching it. He really is. He really plays up on the whimsical, funny side of the First Doctor, which was totally absent from Twice Upon a Time version of the First Doctor, I felt. Agreed. Rockatora, the purple hat guy, says, I will defend the Gunfighters to my grave. It is a top 80 story. It is a top 80 story of all time for me. That is significant because there are over 360 stories. The Ballad of the Last Chance Saloon is extremely catchy to me. Then you're going to love it because you hear it a lot. The cliffhanger where Stephen has to sing it is one of the funniest and most unique cliffhangers of all time. Dodo is actually good. And no, Stephen is not stupid. He just is excited to travel to the Old West and gets caught in with the wrong crowd. He can't do anything about it. All of his attempts to help are thwarted not because he's an idiot, but because the villains are actually capable and dangerous. The death of Wyatt's brother is one of the more realistically acted deaths in the whole show. That must be Morgan. And on top of all of that, it's just plain hilarious throughout, especially the scenes with Hartnell. He was clearly having a blast making this story. Lard Gorth says, the Gunfighters is a classic. I wouldn't like to mess with Johnny Ringo. It also has the legendary Shane Rimmer in the cast as one of the Clanton brothers. I don't know who that is. I'm an American. I'm not familiar with all of the British actors. Ryan Tablet says, I love the Gunfighters. There's not many proper cowboy Wild West stories in classic Who. That's fair. And I really enjoy A Town Called Mercy in modern Who. JLBWHO says, I adore the Gunfighters. I love everything about it. Yes, even the song. Naomi says it's been years since I last saw the Gunfighters, and I don't currently have it, so I can't make a judgment on it. I have recently watched The Romans, and I liked it this time, partly because of your review of it. Well, thank you, Naomi. I appreciate that. I'm glad you enjoyed my review of The Romans. So such a fun story. Tedious Milkshake. I love that name. Tedious Milkshake. I love that name. That's right up there with Bananas Are Good. I like that. Says, sorry to say I've not seen either of them, but I've heard the Gunfighters has a lot of singing, and I am a theater kid, so I'm going to have to choose that one. I was actually a theater major in college myself. I have an associate's degree in art. I did several plays and a musical, actually, so I very much love a theatrical background. It's one of the reasons I like 60s Who, especially like Planet of Giants. They have a very theatrical approach to them, almost like it's a teleplay at times, and I really enjoy that. Liam Neeson says The Romans 100%. The Gunfighters novelization is better than the actual TV story. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. I'm in 100% agreement with you. I much prefer the novelization of the Gunfighters. Henry Andrews says The Gunfighters has a great way of setting the scene, but that song, yes. I actually really like the guy playing Doc Holliday in the Gunfighters too. I really do. Random Joke says The Romans has that excellent acting from the guy who played Nero. Yes. The Gunfighters has some hilariously bad accents and some decent, nice songs, Johnny Ringo. So, of course, my choice is obvious, The Chase. No, but I'd rather watch The Romans, although Gunfighters is decent. I can't do The Chase. I just can't do The Chase. Colin Coney, who's one of my top-tier patrons, says, well, it has to be The Romans, as it doesn't contain the Ballad of Johnny Ringo, but I have to say that the comedies aren't my bag, really. Not that I want grim, hard sci-fi, but I do find that out-and-out comedies take me out of the universe a bit. I don't mind the odd witticism or Tom Baker-styled laconic delivery, but I don't really want a full episode of it. Compare the jibes the jibs that Tom delivers in Genesis to General Raven, or the Cybermen in Revenge, high bar as I know. Oh, Revenge is definitely a high bar. I love Revenge. With the comedy in The Romans, the one-liners come as relief against the backdrop of dark events to lighten the tone slightly, whereas in the out-and-out comedies, the dark events seem to be diminished by the humor. Let's be honest, in the Gunfighters, the barkeep is murdered, and the events of the OK Corral are looming, and in The Romans, all of the massacres that take place off-screen, the persecution of the Christians are kind of glossed over. I think that it maybe detracts from the actual history. Perhaps if they were No One Dies episodes, they might tonally sit better with me. That's an interesting take and a unique point of view on it. And an interesting way to look at it. Jarence Bowman says The Romans. And Philip says The Romans. Dennis Spooner really knew how to write for television, and the standard of acting is generally higher, although I don't dislike the Gunfighters. Kenneth Raymond Moore says, my main issue with the Gunfighters is the portrayal of Steven Tyler, a badass space pilot from the future who's faced threats from the Greeks to the Daleks as a bumbling moron. My secondary issue is some of the bad accents. Other than that, it's your standard comedy that turns dark by Donald Cotton. Joshua says, I have to say The Romans. I like the Gunfighters. As well, Westerns were huge at that time, and I'm a big John Wayne, Roy Rogers, and Clint Eastwood fan. I like John Wayne and Clint Eastwood as well. But the singing and the fake American accents were awful and was a real put-off. I felt it was a little over-comedic for Doctor Who. Even Ian Levine himself was embarrassed by it. That I didn't know. That's interesting. And Shamrock Particle says, The Romans needed to be told straight, as its themes were pretty grim. And see, again, I see that point. He's saying basically the same thing I think Colin was talking about. Was that Colin that was just saying that? Yeah, Colin was saying that. I don't even think about that. The actual things going on, the persecution of the Christians and all the people that get slaughtered during the burning night. Because I'm so focused on, I enjoy the story because I find it funny. So they do make valid points. Plus, I Claudus, the 70s version, did the comedy better. Brian Blessed is a hoot, as is Patrick Stewart. Is that the one that John Hurt's in? I know he's in like a version of I Claudus, I think. Gunfighters, which got my vote, was intended to be farce first and foremost, and it shows. The costume is worst, if not intentionally campy, but everything else is perfect. apart from the song where the joke is that they're playing it that much, but jokes don't always land. That one, if that one was descending like from space, not only did it miss the runway, it missed the planet, that joke. It didn't even hit the planet. So there's a mix of votes. There's a mix of picks in the comments. Matter of fact, I swear Gunfighter might have actually gotten more comments in favor of it than the Romans did. I didn't actually count them, but it's a pretty good mix of both. Whereas the actual poll, 77% voted for the Romans, 19% for the Gunfighters, with 4% calling it a tie. And I'm on the Roman side on this one. So I want to know, if you didn't get a chance to vote in this poll, which one you prefer between the Gunfighters and the Romans for your comedic First Doctor historicals. Other things to do, don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button. That helps me out, and I certainly appreciate it. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me on that. There's a link to that down in the description below. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons, Stephen Crane, Colin Coney, and Finn Perkins. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. I have recently become a YouTube partner, so I have monetized the channel. So if you would like to become a member of the YouTube channel, get exclusive perks, bonus videos, video requests, stuff like that, there are several different tier levels for that as well. You can find a link to that down there, and that's appreciated if you'll take a second to look at that. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review, and a link to my Amazon wish list is down there as well. Most importantly, thank you for watching.